Hi there, my name is Svetlana Stefanova, and I'm the Executive Director of the 17th Annual Damn Short Film Festival. We're broadcasting virtually from Boulder City, Nevada, and we have over 160 international short films and music videos streaming on demand at damnshortfilm.org. And we're going to have a conversation with some of our filmmakers today. This is for two of the programs, the International A and International B blocks. You can go to damnshortfilm.org and purchase tickets to these programs. They're $12 each or $100 for the entire pass. But let's just get to introducing our filmmakers. Let's get you guys up on screen. Hi.
Hi.
All right. I'll have you each introduce yourself and what your role on your project, what the name of your project is, and what your role was. We'll start with Shreya.
Hi. So my name is Shreya, and I'm the director for the film The Sun Rises in the West. I also wrote it and directed it. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's just go in kind of like a clockwise manner here. We'll go with Nora next.
Hi, I'm Nora. I'm the writer-producer of the short film Alina.
Awesome. Farah?
Hello, hi, I'm Farah Nabulsi, and I am the co-writer and director and part producer of The Present.
Thank you. And Dana?
Hi, my name is Dana, and I'm director of the short film Kafas.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today. I would like to start this off with a question. So these are all very personal stories, and I just wanted to ask all of you, why was it important for you to tell this story, to be a part of this project? Again, we'll start with Shreya.
So my story mostly follows this girl, maid, who works at a rich household in this city of Ahmedabad, and it's her journey to like decide if like she wants to follow her career or like she wants to like give into what her father wants her to do, which is to settle down and get married. It is a very common thought process that you see in India. It's like a cultural thing which needs to really be brought forward, and what comes out of it is like when they're not allowed to do what they want to do, they sometimes go down like the wrong path, which is what kind of my protagonist does by getting into this whole illegal matter of travel just to like be able to live her life freely. So at what cost is she getting her freedom is what I wanted to explore and like put out there. So that's the reason I was really passionate about making this film.
That's wonderful. That's such an important story to be told. Nora, how about you?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for having us, and it's really lovely to be amongst all these women. Farah, it's great to be reunited with you. We've met elsewhere, and I'm
Yes.
so proud of you. Mabruk, alif mabruk for you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very excited for you. Yeah, our film is really just about a girl gang in World War II who defy the Nazis in kind of unusual, extraordinary ways with very little means at their disposal. So they smuggled babies to safety. It's a personal film for me for many reasons, but one of which was just the climate that we're living in. Unfortunately, there's just many, in the past several years, there's been a rise of fascism and hate and racism, of course. And I was just really interested in exploring in the past what regular people did in those circumstances. You know, like the average teacher, the average grandmother, the average social worker, like what did regular people do in those circumstances? So that's really like the heart of the film, is looking at those stories and looking to them for inspiration.
Yes, definitely. And especially when we're going through, so much in the world right now, and you think about, well, how do you respond to what's happening and what would you do in certain situations? So it's really important to think about. Farah, how about you? Why was this project so important to you?
So, the present is basically about the basic human right of freedom of movement. And, I'm Palestinian. I don't live there, but I've been there many, many times, and I've personally experienced the sort of indignities and frustrations of checkpoints. And I've witnessed many Palestinians at these Israeli checkpoints. And I've spoken to so many Palestinians who literally live this sort of absurd reality day in and day out. And there's a very particular young man who I've gotten to know who actually lives on a road where 80 meters up from his house, there is a checkpoint that he has to go through pretty much not just every day, but many, many times a day, no matter where he wants to go, what he wants to do, who he wants to see. So I felt very compelled to tell this sort of human story that, yes, it's a fiction film, but it is based on a very cruel reality on the ground in Palestine today. And, like Nora said, it's a time to kind of speak up against all forms of racism, discrimination, and fascism and all of that. So I felt very compelled to tell this story. It speaks to my own identity, as so many people I know. So that's why.
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's just so interesting that we all have these differences, and nobody should be dehumanizing people, and that's just what it feels like, just where you were born and all that. So thank you so much for telling that story. Dana, why was this project so important to you?
So Kafkas is about a family in wartime Aleppo, and war is going on outside their house, and they're deciding whether to leave or stay in their house, and there's a conflict between the father and the son. I actually don't have personal connection to Syria, but I am really interested in telling human interest stories and stories about human rights as well. So I thought there's a lot of coverage on Syria, but people still didn't really know what was going on, and I wanted to spread some awareness about what was going on. So I decided to focus it on Syria, and it was a chance for me to do more research and learn about the conflict myself. I even traveled to Greece for a couple of weeks and went to a refugee camp and talked to some Syrian refugees there, which was really eye-opening for me, and it was a good chance to learn about the conflict and the people involved.
Yes, definitely. And it's so interesting to see. It starts off with a very normal, something we all, a birthday we're celebrating, and then this, this is the reality that people are living, and it's so important that people, feel that. And that's what I love about short films, is you get to experience so many different perspectives, especially around the world and the, international films. And so again, I'm so happy that all of us are here right now. So thank you so much. Do we have any questions yet from the audience? You guys can chat in. We're streaming live to Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and as well as Eventive, our streaming platform. So please if you're tuning in, please ask us a question. I guess I'll ask another question for everybody. What was the most difficult part of working on this project for you? Shreya, we'll go with the same order again.
Poor Shreya.
No. So actually, we took up this project when I was in LA, and I was still writing over here, and my producer was with me here in LA. And when I decided that this film needs to be shot in my own city, because it's a story that is very personal, because actually the story is about my helper back home. The events kind of happened with her, except I altered the ending for like dramatic purposes. She didn't actually run away, but there are people who do that, and I just had to shed light on that. So when we decided that this needs to be filmed in the same place where she has been like brought up, to like bring that nuanced feeling to it and everything, my producer had to fly back 2 or 3 months prior to the shoot to help bring together everything, the crew, cast, locations, and everything. And it was a really tough challenge because we've never produced back there. And yes, we are from the same city, so like language was not a barrier, but finding the right contacts was a huge key. Because for any project to be successful, you have to have people who are as dedicated as you are. So I think that was one of the biggest challenge that we faced, but it was quite worth it, because in the end, like, we were really able to deliver, and the team came through, and it was really nice. So yeah.
Awesome. Nora, how about you?
To be honest, the hardest challenge was on one of the days of filming. One of the crew members had like a racist meltdown towards our director, who's my husband, who's brown and an immigrant, which is really sadly ironic given the nature of our film. So it stopped the shoot completely. And it was kind of scary, honestly. It was like, we've done so many shoots before. We've always had, honestly, very positive experiences. But we lost half a day of filming because we didn't have this crew member. Obviously, we had to let him go. But so I really felt like we weren't going to have a film, because I'm sure, as any of you guys can relate, like when you're working on a budget and tight schedule, like each half day is huge, right? So we had to rewrite the film a bit, and so that was kind of, I think it ended up working, I think, for the benefit of the film and the story as a whole. It was a weird blessing in disguise, but that was, I think, the most challenging thing. It kind of weighed heavy on us, even through post. Whenever we got to that part of the film, even when I see it now, I'm like, oh, like it gives me kind of a heaviness to see it. But it also, for us, motivated us to, like, we really have to tell stories like this, because this still exists in modern day Los Angeles. There are still people who have hate in their hearts, obviously. And, so it made it really visceral for us. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I can imagine that. Yeah. Pharaoh, how about you?
Where do I start? One of the main sort of hardest things I had to do for this film was scene 2 of the film is an actual real checkpoint. So while the rest of the film is a set that I designed and we built as a checkpoint, scene 2, where there are hundreds, thousands of Palestinians actually going to work, they were all real people. They weren't actors, and the checkpoint was real. And we actually shot those shots during the prep period, literally at 3 a.m. Amongst the only fiction was our protagonist in the middle of all that. And as you can see in the scene, it's hundreds, thousands of Palestinians, men. And as a female director, I would stick out like a sore thumb. We went in guerrilla style. We wanted to avoid being kind of noticed by the military, because the military was around the corner. And so we didn't take in any lighting. We went in with 2 cameras, and I would come out direct and sort of hide behind a wall. And we kind of knew how far we could go till we were in the line of vision of where we might kind of get in trouble. And it was just high stress, high pressure, high everything. But I felt so strongly about filming at this infamous checkpoint in Bethlehem. And I'm so glad we did it. But it was really one of the hardest things we had to do. And then on a slightly lighter note, I mean, there's loads of stories I could tell you, but on a slightly lighter note, about two days before we had shoot, I hadn't actually cast the main muscle guy in the shop, because the person that I thought we wanted, it was just like, no, this isn't going to work. So I actually ended up again in Bethlehem, like birthplace of Jesus. I'm like running around at gyms at 11 at night, asking like the gym owners, I need a man with, big muscles, this, that, the other, who can act, and this will happen 48 hours before shoot. So I cast him, and I was like, yes, I found my guy. And it was the first day of shoot, and it was the first scene. We did that shop as the first scene. And he didn't show up for 3 hours. And it was one of those like, oh, I was like having a melt. Where is he? And it literally, it kind of pushed, obviously nothing like half a day or a day of crisis, but I thought he wasn't going to show up, and he just overslept. He didn't actually realize kind of how big this was. Do you see what I mean? He just thought, oh, this crazy woman came and found me 2 days ago in the gym. And then when he arrived, and there was like 50 really angry people, or not 50, maybe 30 or whatever, but we were all like, he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. So that was the first.
There's a connection issue, I think. Okay, it's not just on my end. Well, yeah, wow, that's very, very interesting to hear. He was definitely quite the character in that shot. But anyways, hopefully Farah's connection issue gets worked out. We'll go to Dana next for this question.
Yeah, so I think the hardest part was casting actors who spoke Arabic. I initially got a casting director, and she got another casting director on board who specialized in working with Arab actors around LA. So he helped a lot in getting people. And then it was directing in Arabic, because I don't speak Arabic. So just being able to talk to the actors, they spoke English, but we had a few rehearsals where we did it in English, and then we rehearsed in Arabic afterwards. And they brought their own ideas to things. I think another thing was making the film as authentic as possible, because people, I got a little bit of pushback that I'm not Syrian, so why are you telling this story about Syria? So I wanted to try to make things as authentic as possible. So I really talked to the actors and helped them, and we collaborated on ideas that we had about different things in the film and different moments and stuff. So they brought a lot to the table as well. And I think it was a good experience. Ultimately, I was collaborating more with them than I usually would with an actor on like other decisions around the film, like some like set design or just like specific moments within the script. And then the last thing was finding the location, because we were shooting. So it's a Chapman film, so we had to shoot it in Orange County, but it was supposed to be in Aleppo. So we basically looked at houses that might look like it could fit, like be a Middle Eastern house. And we found a house that had, it was kind of a neutral house, but it had like kind of like discolored walls. So it felt like, or painted walls that looked a little bit discolored. So it looked like it was maybe a war-torn or a house that had been through a lot. The thing is, the problem was that it was a little bit too clean, and being able to like dirty it up was a challenge. And it's something we didn't really totally go through with. Because we didn't want to like put dust around the house and stuff. So I think making the house look authentic, I got a lot of like Syrian pictures and like tapestries, and that kind of filled in for with production design wise. But I think that was still an ongoing challenge, was making sure the house was appropriate, looked appropriate.
Yeah, for sure. So I think we still don't have any questions from the audience. Come on, guys, just send us something. But I guess I'm just gonna ask this question: what's it like being a female filmmaker? Shreya, we'll start with you.
So I'm very new to this because I recently began filming as a, and it's not that bad, I guess, because I've just begun. Like, I've not actually experienced the industry, or like I've not actually gone into it. But from my experience that I've had, um, it was like, with every colleague that I've worked with, they've paid me like equal respect and kept me at the same level as them. Like, nobody has ever thought of me as, oh, I'm not capable enough, or like I will not be able to do it. And which is something that I've seen happens a lot sometimes, where they like try to put you down because you're like, oh, you're like a girl or a woman or whatever. But I don't think I have experienced that. And also, I think what really goes a long way is like, if you really have a strong voice and if you really know what you want to tell, then I don't think anybody cares if you're a female or a male. Like, if you have a story to tell and if it's a strong voice, then go ahead and tell it, and then that's it. Because people are going to listen to you no matter what. Because that's the story that they're really invested in. So, like, yeah.
Well, great. I'm so happy that you've had that experience. That's really wonderful. Nora, what's your experience been like?
It's interesting because I'm from LA, but I entered filmmaking in the Middle East. So that's where I got introduced to filmmaking. And actually there, it gave me an interesting perspective because most of the directors I knew were women. It's a very, almost everybody that I worked for, I was always, my bosses were women, producers, directors. So for me, it was always a very female present industry. And then when I came back to the States, I felt a disparity. So it's interesting to see the difference, but it's lovely. I think it's great I've enjoyed collaborating with other women. The only thing that I notice is that sometimes, and maybe it's sort of a subconscious thing, or I don't know, but I was producing the short, and sometimes with a few male cast members, they didn't trust my knowledge of my own material, or I wonder if I was male, maybe that would be different, just in terms of like World War II knowledge, or, just like basic things. They often had to hear it from a male with me, which is interesting because I didn't really experience that before, but our male actors were lovely. There are a lot of women in this cast. And I'm lucky to work with my partner who directed this, is very, was raised by strong women and has a very feminist outlook and tries to hire as many women as he can because he says that we're the most competent people on set are women. So that's always been easier for me, but yeah.
I think a lot of women can relate to that in whatever their profession is, just being always just second guessed, and definitely. Farah, what's your experience been like?
So a bit similar to Noor in the sense that, so in the Arab world, yeah, it tends to be more women in the sort of film industry, or at least in directing, or that I know. And then when it's sort of the UK and the rest of the world, or let's say the West, it seems to be more of a problem. Now, look, that might be rooted, ironically, in the fact that maybe less men in the Middle East get into the film industry. Then, so I'm not sure exactly the reasons, but it's been okay for me, the journey. I think that it was maybe a bit more of an issue in the sense that I was a first-time director versus I was a woman. But I think that you just have to, in many ways, assert yourself from the get-go. A little bit like Shreya said, in the sense of let everybody know that you know what you're doing. It may or may not appear like that, but you know what you want, and then everyone kind of gets on board, and they start to believe in you. And then next thing you know, I was running a team where it was mixed. It was men and women, of course, but a lot of HODs, the heads of the departments, were male actually. And by the end of it, they were like, "You're our leader," and I was like, "Yes." It's worked. Like they've gotten line, But you had to kind of assert yourself, maybe not in the same way a male director walking on set might have had to, perhaps. But once you did it, I think, and everyone respected the story you wanted to tell and how you wanted to tell it. After that, we were okay. You know what I mean? So yeah, I can't really complain in that sense. And also, sorry, my background wasn't in film. My background was in banking and finance, and that's a really male predominant industry. So I kind of learned a long time ago how to kind of hold my own in that sense and assert myself in a way. So I'm just not intimidated by men. So it was just one of those like, no, I'm not going to put up with, I'm not going to swear, sorry. I'm not going to put up with, if I don't, I'm just not gonna. So
that's a good skill. That's a good skill to have. Dana, what about you?
Yeah, so most of my directing experience is in grad school, in context of Chapman. So I did find it as a relatively supportive environment for women, but there are certain things that always like come up. Like I also agree about like asserting myself. It's something that I need to work on because I'm not very confrontational. And I think there are times when you need to be and you need to like put your foot down. So I'm still working on that. And I think getting people to understand that and people to like really take you seriously in that sense is like something that as a woman I'm still working on as well. I also feel like there was a couple times just kind of like microaggressions where like I had certain roles on set, other roles than directing, and then a man would come in and like once I was directing, and then a DP started directing as well. Like he was the one that was like he started giving his ideas and like taking over, and I was like, why is he giving all his ideas? He's not the director. And then another time I was like a first AD, and then another crew member just came in and started like replacing me without even asking if it was okay. So I feel like those were the few times I experienced a little bit of, I would say it's sexism or just kind of men who are like trying to assert themselves over you. So I feel like there are times that exist, but I do feel, at least in grad school, women, we bonded together. We formed a women directors group. So I feel like women are becoming good about bonding together and forming support groups. And I think that's what's really important is that women support each other and have a place to talk about things and debrief and stuff. So.
Definitely, and having conversations like this to help each other out with like when we're dealing with those kinds of issues is so important. We actually have a question from the audience, so let's get that up on the screen. This is for Nora. Oh, and there it is. How did you come up with the story for Alina? How long did it take to screenwrite it?
A long time. I came up with it during the 2016 election. I was doing these like social media posts for every day. I would post like a person that was in, like restoring my faith in humanity. So a lot of these interesting women in history. And I came across these heroic female smugglers. And I was like, that my mom's own backstory has a lot of connective tissue with the story of this film. And so it just was like, I got obsessed with it, honestly. But it took a while. It took a while to figure out. It felt like a very big story. I mean, the story that I was researching was over many years. So I was like, I can't do a short like that. How do we kind of focus it? So it took a while. I started writing, I don't even remember. I think late over Christmas 2017. And I spent, I don't remember, even maybe a month or two just kind of working on it, honing it, and then starting to bring in collaborators on board to bring it to life. But but we premiered the film in 2019. So from like the first spark to like actually seeing it premiere was like I think around a 3-year period. Yeah.
Oh, did I cut out?
I think maybe, I don't know if I cut out.
Okay. I'm sorry. I was having some connection issues. So hopefully I didn't cut you off or anything.
No, not at all. Not at
all. Okay. Do we have any more questions from the audience yet? Please, we have a live chat going, so any question you want to ask for these incredible filmmakers. So I guess I would like to ask all of you, what impact do you hope that your film will make? Shreya, we'll start with you.
One of the main questions that I really asked in my film that was like the center of it all was, why do people this, everybody's very dreamy eyed about this whole American dream concept, and I was like, why is it that people leave their own country to go and struggle somewhere else when they already have so much here back at home? Why is it? That was one of the main ideas that I was dealing with when I was writing this. And this is one of the questions that I really have. I've seen people when I've like, since the time like I've grown up, like 7, 8, I've seen people leave just to come to the US and like genuinely struggle, and nowhere near the American dream. They're just struggling in the hopes that they're going to achieve it one day. And that's one of the biggest questions that I really want people to try and understand, and be like, your own land has its own value. Do not forget that. Like, that is one thing that you also have to keep in mind. I think, yeah, that's one of the things that I want to pass on with the story. And the other part was that it's the way, like, I guess it's something that really resonates, like, in my culture and in cinema, that you see in my culture over there back home, is basically like, please give women their freedom. They need their own voice, and they need to be able to do what they want. And don't try to like restrict themselves and like tie them to marriage at a very young age, and then not let them do what they want to do. So yeah, I think these are the two things that I was dealing with, and I hope people understand that this is what I was trying to tell through my film, and be able to just think about it. So yeah.
Those are very, very important points. And to the first point, I can personally relate. I'm an immigrant. I was born in Bulgaria. I moved to the States when I was 8.5, and in Eastern Europe and, anywhere in the East, there's always that, like, going to the West, it's either, definitely America, number one, but for us, it was like, oh, if you lived in Western Europe, like that's, so like, we had a lottery, a green card lottery. My mom won the lottery. So like, that's why I'm here. So it's just such an interesting thing in the world, So, yeah. Nora, what impact do you hope that your film makes?
Kind of like Shreya, I'm interested in films that just open up questions, right? Because at the end of the day, I think we're telling stories. We're not necessarily, we're not directly saving lives. You know what I mean? Like, we're just trying to get people to hopefully have conversations. And for our film, it was very personal. I mean, I don't know what the audience honestly takes away from it. For me, it was really thinking about, I was curious what I would do if I was living in that time of history. I was just genuinely curious on my own, and what would I have done? Because it's easy, I think, to say I would do this heroic thing because I'm living in the comfort of Los Angeles in 2020, and I could say, but the reality is these women were like risking their lives for often for strangers, and in like really brutal way. Like, if they're caught, they're just executed on sight. And that's like a very heavy reality. Like, it's it's a very big act of humanity that these women were doing every day. So it was really just an exploration of like, what does that feel like to be in that moment? And, you know, and to kind of let that carry on, hopefully in the audience, in terms of how do we handle injustices that we're witnessing present day, especially when they're occurring in communities that are not our own. Do we care? Do we not care? Like how much do we extend our compassion for people that we think of as other to us? So it was just kind of like thinking about these questions and seeing how the audience takes that in and what they take away from it.
Definitely. We all need to, you know, get out of that complacency of just, you know, being in our own little world and, you know, all that. Farah, oh, we have wait, no, let's finish this round. But we do have a question. Yay. Farah, what impact do you hope your film makes?
Well, I think Nora summed it up in the sense that, you know, like I mentioned, this is a fiction film, but it is based on a present day cruel and absurd reality that exists on the ground in Palestine today. And so as a filmmaker, I very much want to give audiences this emotional, visceral experience. I think all good films should give audiences an emotional experience, but I certainly want people to wonder, you know, what life is like for people like Yusuf and Yasmin. What are the human dynamics required to cope with such a perverse situation? And to ask, you know, would they accept it for themselves? And it's interesting because we're at a time when the whole world is under movement restrictions, but for very different reasons, for our safety, for health. But what if it's decade after decade for much more sinister, more systemized, systematic, deliberate, man-made reasons? And if you had your freedoms curtailed, what would you do? And would you accept it? So, you know, I want people to contemplate in the present day, and like Nora said, you know, not to others, but to empathize, to place themselves in the shoes of another, and think and feel what that must be like. So if my films had that impact, I'm a very happy person.
Definitely. It's just so amazing with short films, and especially you get just all these different perspectives, and it's just so important to just put yourself in other people's shoes. It's just so important. Dana, what impact do you hope that your film makes?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what's been said. I think raising questions and raising discussion is the most important thing. Making people aware that in terms of movement, there is, while a lot of us are stationary, there is a huge movement with refugees around the world, and there's a huge and there's a lot of issues around that. So I wanted to make people aware of what refugees are going through on an everyday basis, and kind of the moral conflict that they have about staying at home or leaving, and just putting a spotlight on that as a dilemma that they face. I also generally want to tell stories of marginalized communities. I think that we need to spotlight people who aren't, you know, like the typical Hollywood characters, and celebrate them. So I think being able to tell those stories is just inspiring other people to also tell stories, or people from those communities to tell their own stories, and hopefully empower them to tell their own stories as well.
Yes, that is very, very important. We do have one final question. Let's see, to everyone. There's much change going in the world today. And as women, do you feel like women are making progress in the whole world? Is the walls coming down for equality for women? Let's again start with Shreya and go all the way around.
I don't know about equality, but I can tell you that all of us being present over here right now, putting out films, the kind of films that we have already, shows that we are making progress in terms of trying to get an audience that sees the world through a female's perspective, if that makes sense. And I guess I don't know if equality is something that we'll ever be able to achieve, but it's something that we can obviously strive for, because in the end, we do want what we deserve and we should get that. So, yeah.
Nora?
Oh, Keith, that's a great question. I don't really know, to be honest. I don't know. I do think that over the past few years there's been more openness about women being able to speak up. Obviously, with the Me Too movement, Time's Up, and I mean, I think that just that's been a very big step forward. I mean, communities that I've known that would never talk about harassment or violence or abuse or inequality of women are now starting to talk about it much more openly. And so I think that that's hopefully a change in the positive direction. But the reason why I say I don't know is because I think sometimes these things, it's different. It's different for women of different socioeconomic backgrounds. It's different for women of different racial backgrounds. So it's hard to say, because sometimes in the media, what we're seeing is often women of privilege having the platform to speak out. So to answer that question fully, we would need to hear from all kinds of women. But I hope things are moving in the positive direction. I just don't think we know for sure yet,
Farah?
Yeah, I think we're definitely moving in the right direction. I think that collectively, globally, everyone is much more aware that this is an issue that needs to be addressed and progressed and improved. And so there are some great initiatives that maybe to some seem contrived or biased towards women or something like that. But unfortunately, what you have to do in society is actually deliberately make certain changes so that the natural changes follow and evolve. And for example, in the film world, I think in Europe, for example, in countries like Sweden, where they've made actual, when it comes to public funding, for example, for in film, where they said, look, funding towards films, you go 50-50. If just as many women and just as many men are looking for funding in film, then we need to make sure as the government, if you like, that there is equal dispersion of those funds. Because I think a big problem in progress is the gatekeepers. And the gatekeepers tend to be white males. This seems to have been the situation. And if they're not white, but they're male. So it's also about, with time, also bringing in more of the gatekeepers to be diverse, not just male and female, but in every way. And I think we're just all aware of it, and there's a lot of movement and progress. And I think we will get there. I mean, just think 100 years ago, think 300 years ago, think 5. We are moving in the right direction, but how fast, how well, we'll see.
Yes, Dana.
Yeah, I also agree with everything that's been said. I think we are moving in the right direction, but it does really vary based on where you are. I think in America, there are more voices and there are more women speaking up. But in other countries and with other socioeconomic classes, it's different for them and they have less mobility. So I think it's really the responsibility of us as media makers to raise awareness of women's issues and tell women's stories. And I think that's the way we can create change, because I do think that it does have a long way to go for things to be completely equal, if they will ever be equal at all. So yeah, there is a long way to go, and I think that it's our responsibility to raise awareness about women and women's issues and women's stories. I even find I've noticed kind of stories about women gain less traction in terms of I don't know, this is kind of like a blanket statement, but just from some of the films I've made and some of my peers' films, I feel like films that are strictly about women's stories are getting less traction. So I feel like there needs to be some improvement in that sense of celebrating women's stories. And I think with the media being more accessible, we can work towards that and work towards highlighting women in our media making.
Definitely. And we are out of time, but I would love for each of you to just let us know how to find you, social media, website. How can people find you, Shreya?
You can find me on IMDb, you can find me on Instagram, and you can find me on Twitter as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Nora? And I'm sorry, Shreya, what, just under your name?
Oh yeah, you can just do it under my name, yes.
Okay, great. Nora?
Same, just under my name. You can find me on Instagram.
Great. Farah?
Yeah, you can find me IMDb, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Yeah, even my Facebook is a public page, Farah Nabulsi, in variations, Farah.Nabulsi, Farah_Nabulsi, Farah Nabulsi. You'll find me.
Great. Dana?
Yeah, I'm also on Instagram at DMLI, or I also have a little production page at Spectre Prod. Also on Facebook under my name or Spectre Productions, and Twitter at Dana Lee too.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and for making incredible films. And we hope to see you in the virtual lounge. Everybody can join us and talk to the filmmakers more there. There is actually a specific channel for each program, so you can have conversations about the films in each program there. So please join us. Go to our website, damnshortfilm.org, and we'll see you in 15 minutes for Drama F. Okay, bye.
Thank you.